Morning.
Good morning. Oh, you're in one of your hazy moods today.
I am. I don't know. I was last night. We had a meeting. I can't think. We had a thing late last night with Mick Roberts and Andy Dobson. So it was a sort of 9 UK time. And it was doing this then. And I thought it was because, you know, maybe it was the light wasn't, because it was electric light. Maybe that wasn't so good. But now we're broad daylight and I'm still going in and out, and it's just looking at me, it's making me feel dizzy.
You could, of course, tell people you have contact with that they have had a glass of wine too much or something as an explanation.
Yeah, but it's 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. So
yes, it's maybe exaggerated.
Yeah, not that desperate yet. But I don't know quite what to do about this. Maybe I'll...
Let's see if this is better.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So all I did was switch the...
Yes, that probably the background has or uniform distribution of light.
Yeah.
Probably the software was trying to find the best way of showing you with two different kinds of dark and...
Right. It's when
now you have half dark and half white. So
yeah, it likes being against that's right. Interesting.
the uniform background, apparently.
Yeah. All right. We'll stick with that then.
It was more interesting with the varied background.
Well, just proves I'm not in a totally blank room.
Okay, here's a lot of people joining.
Yeah.
We are going to decide how to finish off this paper, right? So that we
hope so. Be good, wouldn't it?
The board. Francesca, buongiorno.
Buongiorno, buongiorno. Hello, everyone.
Hi. So Glenn has been busy.
Yes, I haven't even had time to look at what he says. I probably looked at the next to last version or something like that.
Yeah, I had a very quick look in the last 5 minutes just to see what he'd done with section 1, which is now split, because you know it was really, really long. So that looks much better, I think, like this. But
it's still a rather long paper. I mean, it's still 8,000 words. I haven't counted this time. But
it says 9:230 in the version I've got open.
9:230.
But maybe it can shrink a little bit. I don't know. Or maybe it doesn't matter too much.
Lisa, hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
My feeling was that now there is plenty of ideas in this paper. I mean, plenty of points. So that's okay. We just have to decide how to finish it off, how to edit it, because it's too long, too worthy.
Mm.
If I were a referee, I would say, good stuff, but cut it down by a third or something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe some things are a little bit repeated. That depends on when you read in detail and then maybe try to compact things. So I guess one could cut down by a third without too much problems. The question is then how to achieve that in a democratic way. Since we are now, how many? 8 people or something like that on the paper? Yeah. 8, 9. Any suggestions how to be democratic but not totally? Because if you try to be totally democratic, then I don't know how we can manage to all have a say on everything in the paper. Should we distribute one section to each and say, shorten it, make it concise, and then that's it, or something like that? Or
maybe.
Glenn, good morning.
Morning.
Hi, Glenn.
Morning.
Morning.
Janpi was just wondering about how one might cut this down a little bit, and the best way of doing that in a sort of democratic fashion. So because it's quite wordy at the moment. I don't know what.
No,
you-
my feeling is that most good points are now in
Yeah.
the paper. I mean, many things are said here and there, and that's very fine.
Yeah.
But it's long and somewhat repetitive, I think, but that needs some more detailed editing to understand whether things are said 1.5 times or something like that now and then. But anyway, how do we do this practically? Are there enough sections to take one section each and then with the order of cut it down and let's see how the paper looks after each one has cut down one section or parts of a section? Or
That's slightly dangerous with regard to repetition, isn't it?
it might be, yes.
I mean, I guess one thing is like what I haven't been too concerned about word limit at the moment because I wasn't quite sure what we were aiming for. I mean,
But it's not so much a question of word limits for the paper, I guess. It's more the question of making something readable by being a little bit concise.
yeah,
This is an opinion paper in many ways. An opinion paper should have one main idea somewhere in the forefront. We present challenge areas and then kind of send them out rather, I think you call that pithily
yeah,
in English, in some forceful way. And that's it. I mean, you don't have to repeat it 4 times. That usually bores people when you kind of repeat the arguments many times.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have been trying to sort of rationalize some things are said in different sections, and I've been trying to sort of put those.
Yes, I haven't read your last one. I think I probably saw the next to last one or something like that yesterday. Or the other way is very autocratic. One of us takes on the role of shortening and then see if others like it. But that's even more complicated from a democratic point of view.
I mean, one thing I had thought of suggesting today was that if people had a good read through of the current version and made comments, and that could, I guess those could be like, oh, this was said, 3 times already, or then one person, I guess me, could then take those comments and try and cut, do a real sort of edit down.
Yes. On the other hand, I mean, it's cutting down a piece is very often rewording things in a shorter way, and then after having rewording, not saying something, and then etc. until you think you have cut it down in a meaningful way. And that's difficult to do just by commenting. In effect, what you have to do is rewrite the piece and say, this is the cut down version according to me.
So I guess the alternative then would be to just split the sections up and then give them to like 1 or 2 people to decide on a shorter version, maybe.
That's one possible way to do it, distributed fashion. That's popular with computers today. Parallel processors. I don't know if that's the easiest way to do this, but I'm open to suggestions.
I think my impression when I was reading, I didn't read through the whole manuscript at the beginning. My feeling is that maybe some concepts are still. So I know that we cannot just refer to other chapters, but maybe the discussions that are really about, for example, interventions are still long, and there's a lot of repetition with the intervention chapter. I don't know about the data. I
already know what your section will be to edit.
No, but I'm afraid to cut down too much because, as we said, we can't just assume that people will read both. But
so are you saying that interventions are not well defined in this paper, or that?
No, I'm saying that maybe maybe one thing that could be cut is some parts that are clearly repeated and repeated in a different chapter in a more in-depth.
But by chapter, you mean another challenge paper?
Challenge paper,
That
yeah.
are called the CHP or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So
Yes, probably,
some
because-
topic are clearly explained more deeply in other chapters. So maybe
You know that because you are also writing in the interventions paper, so you kind of know.
yeah,
this.
that indeed that was what struck me. But I guess someone else could say the same with data, maybe, or data bits or estimation bits. Could it be an idea to go through the structure of the paper? Because another thing that I felt about section 6.1, which I really liked, was that maybe the section that is now subsection that is now last, like accounting for human behavior. I had the feeling that this could be an introductory subsection, like moved a bit up, so that this introduces the challenges of
Yeah,
human behavior and contact.
So you're suggesting it would go?
Because it has a very nice start about that the contact between individuals is one of the most important aspects, because it's one of the primary aspects. So I thought it would fit very well as an introduction of the whole. So as a first subsection even before the bridging the gap between spatial and network models. Like first talking about human behavior and contact, and then the specific models like spatial and network models, and then households models.
okay, yeah.
That was just a suggestion, but I thought that maybe restructuring a bit could also help with cutting some repetitions.
But would you want to go into things like TTI before, at the beginning of the section?
Yeah, that's a bit too technical.
It doesn't. That seems too.
You're right.
Do you just mean that first paragraph, or?
I mean, yeah, the first paragraph sounded more like something that could have been said before.
Yeah.
But I agree that the TTI is a bit too specific to be moved. Yeah, you're right.
But that first paragraph could be incorporated, or is partly already probably overlaps with the beginning of this, the sort of introduction to 6.1, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
I wondered, I don't know how other people feel. To me, spatial wasn't quite in the right place. I would have put it after households, but other people may.
Yeah, it was originally after household. I actually moved it there as a sort of bridge between the sort of network models and
Yeah,
I thought it flowed better from the introduction part, but maybe.
Well, it's whatever other people find natural. To me, I sort of think in a structure that goes from sort of stratified to households and networks, and then on to space, you know, in that order. But this is a personal thing, so yeah. It's whatever other people think.
I mean, I'm easy either way. I literally just moved it there this morning because it seemed to.
I think that's part of the problem. I mean, now that most things are in the paper, I guess, maybe too much, but anyway, most things are in the paper. Each one of us could presumably take it and shorten it and maybe move it around a little bit to the personal style. That we would end up with, how many are we? 9 slightly different papers, because each one has a personal style, a way of phrasing things, and preferred words and whatever. So how do we do this? Because we are quite close, I think, now that the material is here, right? So either we present 9 different papers and we merge them, this kind of model merging, taking the
I mean,
average. I don't know how to do that.
I think this time last week I said that I would essentially try and get to that point, and as it turns out, I've not spent as much time on it as I thought I could. But I mean,
but it's a big task to go through the whole paper and try and
Yes, I'm happy to give it all to Glenn and say I wait for the final paper and I'll sign it. But maybe we could help in some way.
exactly. Maybe to avoid the situation Jampi was describing with sort of 9 different styles, maybe if we had 2 or 3 people working on different chunks of the paper, 2 or 3 people looking at 6.1 and maybe not the same group, but an overlapping group on 6.2, so there was some sort of continuity. I don't know, probably not feasible, but something like that might work a bit. But I think whatever you do, you're going to have one person on each section that does an initial shortening and then discusses it with others to see.
Yeah.
Because I don't see. I mean, as Jampi says, you've got to take all the words to bits and move stuff a little bit and move sentences. So you can't do it just with comments.
Okay.
One little thing to drop in while people are mulling about content and so on is that it looks as if the paper, I mean, there's a vaccination paper which is separate from interventions, and it does look as if that will only cover basically vaccine trials and not some of the other areas. So in this paper and in the interventions paper, we've tended to say, but there's a vaccination paper and we must keep things to a minimum so that we don't have too much overlap. But I think there won't be much, if any, overlap with that. Yeah. So it probably affects the interventions paper much more than this one. But if there are things about vaccines that we want, modeling aspects that we want to put in here, we shouldn't feel that they're being covered somewhere else, because they're probably not, except in the interventions paper. I don't know if that helps or hinders, but.
Well, there was some text that I was wondering whether we could cut, but from what you're saying, it sounds like we probably.
Well, it would be okay. I mean, if it's stuff that ought to be covered somewhere, we'd need to perhaps liaise with the interventions paper if it might go in there. But I think the vaccination paper will stick to trials and things like that. So
I mean, one should maybe also try to, since this paper is called something like modeling or models, try to focus on what models can contribute to vaccination strategies or something like that, because vaccination in itself has a lot of aspects. I mean, whom should we protect first, and what is most ethical to do with vaccines? If they don't come all at the time. You can talk a lot about vaccines, but that's not really a modeling question. The modeling could start with, given a certain general strategy of protection, what is the optimal way, given various infectivities and participation in the epidemic process, to distribute a vaccine or something like that. I mean, that's a modeling question, it's an optimization problem. So try to kind of concentrate on what is the modeling aspect, in the sense of what can mathematics help with in this aspect, because there is, of course, ethics and whatever in everything of this and other aspects we discuss. And also with new data, I mean, the thing, there is something nice about digital surveillance and contact tracing. you can talk as long as you want about the ethical aspects. Will people be registered to the central authority? No, wait, they're infected or not. But from a modeling point of view, it's kind of easier. What if the response was quicker than is usual with human contact rates? Could that speed up the process or whatever?
Yeah.
So that's a general way to maybe shorten things, and leave other aspects to the other papers, but still mention here that there is a role for us modelers in almost every aspect, because at some point you cook things down to let's calculate or let's simulate or whatever. But others will then think about other aspects of the same problem. I don't know if one can keep that, then that's a help in shortening things. But what's the real modeling aspect in this question? What are other aspects in this question? And leave them to the other papers. Because does it seem now, I can ask the editors of this thing, Dennis and Valerie, does it seem that all the papers will now be done more or less that were programmed? There will be about 10 papers or whatever it was. Is that the case?
Yes, I think so. I think numbers 1 and 2. So 2 was what was it called? It's sort of the human wildlife interaction, and 1 was purely wildlife. I think those 2 will be combined, so that's 1 less. But on the other hand, I think the data 1 is spawning a challenges of visualization that's separate. And of course, there's the vaccination one. So I think broadly it'll be 10, but it might be 11 or, even 12. It's a bit plus or minus, but it'll be around that. And I think they're all pretty much on track.
Valerie?
Yeah.
Hello. Vaccination, sorry.
Yes.
Vaccination paper, is that
the one I was talking about is 4A.
Yeah.
Dropbox, which Bets is heading up.
You said that is only kind of vaccine trials and so on.
Yes. So I mean, I think Bets may put in some references to other areas, but I don't think she feels that she wants to cover those in that paper, which is fine. But it does mean, we've been saying, we've been a little bit unclear as to exactly where some of the issues were going to be covered. And I think that clarifies it a bit, because things that we weren't sure whether we would come in interventions. I mean, we had thought originally that interventions would be split because it was getting so big between NPIs and pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
Whereas now the 4A isn't covering the whole of pharmaceutical. So for the moment, it's sort of back within the general interventions one, unless it gets so big that we want another split or whatever.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether the choice of leaving the vaccination, only vaccine studies in the vaccination paper is a choice, is a conscious choice, or is just because that's what Beth does, and it's just Beth and her group doing that paper, which it's absolutely fine. Like it seems like, I don't know, it's either this or that, really. But yeah, I'm just trying to think, if I were to put if there was some vaccination stuff to put here, what are the problems, the modeling problems with vaccination? And I wouldn't, like, nothing springs to mind in terms of how you would model vaccination. There's a question of how you, for example, you target your vaccination on different age classes, or how to kind of do stuff while you're vaccinating in real time. So you have parameters that change over time, all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't appear to be like proper mathematical challenges. It's more like how to optimize vaccination as an intervention. And so that goes into the intervention paper. I don't
think
see
most of
how
it
much
would be in interventions, not in this one. But from memory, I thought there were some odd bits in this one as well. So we'll just want to think about that.
Yeah, I think we talk a bit about the interaction with immunity and sort of waning immunity, and then quite a bit of what's here is about the optimization problem of how you find the best strategy, given obviously.
But you get a different optimization problem for every model, it says, right? So if you have a household model, then you get the famous optimizing strategy in households that nobody will ever realize to vaccinate them all to equally unvaccinated people in all families and stuff like that. So it depends on the model what optimization problem you have. Or if you just have a contact matrix, then you're supposed to optimize according to that one, etc. So something is worth saying that you cannot have, there is not one optimization of vaccination. It depends on the model and on the data you have to fit in that model. Because very much is about, are people equally sensitive to infection, or what contacts do people have with other people, etc. So that should be pointed out from a modeling point of view, that there are different problems and different optimizations. Then exactly how we get the data, how we get the information about sensitivities of different age groups or whatever, that's for other people in some sense to go out and research.
But we have already talked about those models. You wouldn't have to say like how to optimize vaccination in a model with households. We already discussed the model with households.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But in other kinds of models, I mean, if you have households and factories, then how would you optimize vaccination if there are overlapping groups? I don't know what the optimal strategy is. I don't know if it looks feasible. If you have feasibility restraints, it must be slightly democratic or something like that, or protect the weak, what kind of, so you could invent another optimization problem. It would be a different result. So what I mean is that one should mention that there is no one optimization. It depends on, and then we can try to say various factors that will enter the optimization problem according to us. And some of them I don't even know how to formulate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you do optimal vaccination in an agent-based simulation? Anybody has an idea how to start out in that one? Because you cannot do 10 million different simulations of the agent-based with different vaccinations of different people to see what works best.
Yeah, I mean, reading between the lines, I think that's what Jasmina was writing about here in terms of it being a problem to optimize. But I guess it's
well, that's good. If it's a problem, it's good. That fits in our paper.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, maybe it's enough to mention that. We don't have to say much more, but that's our bit, that we realize that this will become a problem which is very model dependent and data dependent. And also ethics dependent from the top. I mean, there must be some input to vaccination. What is the optimality criterion? Because we still, I guess, all the time in practice have this balance between life and money and other factors that have to be balanced in some way.
Yeah, I guess my question was just what goes into the vaccination paper, what goes into the intervention paper, and probably there's not much needed here in terms of vaccination, except for maybe a sentence somewhere in the discussion. Have I wrapped it up correctly, or have I missed something?
Yeah, supposedly the vaccination paper will take up all the problems. What if the vaccines are not completely reliable? What if they decay with time? What if they this and that? I mean, of course, we have to model that then.
To some extent, we can only really kind of finesse that once we see what's in the two papers, I guess, or the three papers.
Yes, one could look at what's in the papers now, because I guess they also have recent manuscripts.
Yeah.
To get an idea.
I think they're all available in the Dropbox.
But I mean, if we think about it, what is it that's really just modeling and nothing else? And I have the feeling that almost nothing is just modeling and nothing else. I mean, modeling always touches upon some aspect of the epidemic spread here, of the disease spread. Either we just model the spread of the disease, we model the intervention, we model the vaccination, we model this and that. So
I mean, I think
modeling
that there are-
almost always touches upon something else.
I mean, I think there are sort of modeling issues in that, like, one, it's not obvious, well, how vaccines work is, or their mode of action, I think, it can be quite varied. So, there was discussion, before the vaccines were deployed, did they reduce transmission, or did they just reduce severity of disease? That's whether you represent that in the model is a kind of modeling issue, I think. I mean, it might not be very deep, but it's an issue. And then how that interacts with other heterogeneities that you put in the model, I think, is probably more interesting. So, how that interacts with either existing immunity or with the position in the contact network, so that the chance of you vaccinating people who are sort of super spreaders, or nodes and key nodes in the network. I mean, those kind of things I think are kind of interesting and relevant to vaccines. But
yes, but in some sense, that means that we model things that other people discover or hypothesize, namely this vaccine does not protect against infection, but against symptoms, whatever. And we can model that, of course, put it in the model, and that's a kind of challenge, represent it nicely inside of another model. That is how vaccine works. But it's not something that comes out of modeling and then informs others. It's the other way around. I mean, we get an input. Maybe this vaccine does not protect against infection. Okay, what happens then?
yeah,
we model that.
But I thought at least that the two sort of key themes of the paper were the bidirectional sort of interaction of models with the real world. So one is, modeling can obviously, provide deep insights that allow, understand that, enable understanding that underpins kind of real world actions. And but also the opposite is true, that things that happen out in the real world or new developments in terms of data collection and so on kind of push the modelers to do new things, and that maybe then opens up new analytic challenges as well as kind of just representational challenges.
No, that I agree is very central. Data influences modeling, and sometimes models may influence data. If we some person just comes up with some strange model and then concludes that this data should be informative.
Yeah.
Then it would be the other direction. And maybe we have done that by convincing people that we have to do more research on contact structures in society to understand infection, for instance. That has presumably come out of modeling work that says contact structure may change things quite a lot in a model. And the conclusion. So sometimes we have probably influenced other fields by some theoretical model construct. Showed something. So, no, I agree. That's a very central point in modeling. But otherwise, I still have this feeling that most of our modeling is about also somebody else's problem. And therefore, we have all this contact with all the other papers. And of course, we shouldn't double everything, but to concentrate on some aspect. But we cannot do without that. I mean, there is no model. I was going to say no model without a purpose. Maybe there are some models without a purpose, but most of them have some kind of, at least, official purpose. I want to model the effect of. interventions or heterogeneity or whatever. Then one could discuss if my wish to model the effects of heterogeneity is something without a direct practical consequence, just for the science of it, if heterogeneity might change the spread. Maybe, but that would be pure modeling, something like that. But apart from philosophical questions about what pure modeling is as opposed to applied modeling, how do we go on?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, so do people have an app? So does anyone have an appetite for taking hold of one of these sections and going through it and trying to reduce it?
Yes, I don't mind being given a section here with the order. Try to shorten it a little bit, make it more concise message, and still not lose the ideas in it. And maybe look around a little bit if ideas are copied and have an opinion on whether they should be here or there. There are the same ideas mentioned twice. So look a little bit around one's own section as well.
Yeah, so my feeling is that, like, sections.
I was trying to understand how many, in some sense, different sections are there in the paper now. Officially, it's 5 or something.
Well,
Could it be an idea? Sorry, could it be an idea if we go through the structure? So I missed the. I joined only in the last week, so I don't really know if there were discussions before. But could it be an idea to go through the structure so we both understand if something could be joined or split and isn't split it among us to reduce and edit?
That's a good idea. Can you all see that?
Yep.
This is the table of contents, right?
Yeah, this is the table of contents. Yeah. So so we've got an introduction, which I guess you've all read, and then we now have two kind of new sections formed of one. So I think it's more manageable. So we have representing contact processes as a sort of key challenge, and that covers household models. This piece that Dennis wrote about bridging the gap between spatial and network models. As we discussed last week, there's a potential that network models are kind of not in here and should be. And then we've got this section on accounting for human behavior, which is kind of a bit of a kind of, and everything else, I guess, in a section. But I think it does raise an important point that, that human response, one of the key challenges in this pandemic is that human responses are not that predictable, and it's quite hard to, and you could just say, well, we can't do anything, but there are people out there that are trying to do something with that, and maybe that section doesn't cover that particularly well at the moment, but
a lot of this behavior is not only about contacts. So maybe the title should be contact grows human contacts and behavior or something like that.
Yeah, although maybe, but my thinking was that what's important to us here is the contact, even though there might be lots of other behavior that's going on that drives the contact process. But
yes, of course, if people decide to stay at home, that changes implicitly the contact process.
Yeah, and it seems to me that that's the thing that's been really difficult to do in with COVID, is to sort of understand how to represent that in models.
But if they decide not to vaccinate because they mistrust vaccines, then
I think that
affect the contact process. That's somewhere else.
Yeah, that comes somewhere else. And then
Can I sorry,
Go on.
can I add a very minor comment, just because this is the part that I actually read. I feel that section has also now some discussion about data and more quantitative problems. So I was wondering if it's if it would be useful to add something about this quantitative aspect in the title of the section to make it a bit more precise. But this is a very minor comment.
Okay, yeah. Do you want to just suggest something on the?
No, I actually didn't have time to properly.
Yeah, no, I mean, do you want to just think about it and then maybe
Yeah, okay.
that'd be great.
Okay,
But
that
if
was
it's about data,
6.1.
is it, sorry, Jumpy,
No.
I was only going to say, is it then in the right place if 6.2 is more to do with data or use of data?
Yeah, I'm not sure that 6.2, maybe the data side of things. Yeah, I was trying to, so last week we decided that 6.1 was just too long. So I was trying to find a break point, and it seemed to me that contact processes were quite the most important thing that we model, and B, that there was quite a lot of stuff that was quite explicitly about representing the contact process. And so I don't necessarily see why data can't be important to both these sections. I'm not quite sure whether 6.2 has the right title anymore.
Yeah, maybe just leave off that better use of data bit.
Yeah.
And then maybe that helps.
Or it could just be further challenges or something, I don't know. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what the organizing principle of this section is now, really.
No, but one could, of course, also recreate sections in the sense that one could be called human behavior, another one could be called pathogen behavior, and then take the things about the strains and the pathogen dynamics in a new section called pathogen behavior.
But then we've inherently got this one which covers both.
Yes. So I mean, all the subsections presumably have rather descriptive titles of what they contain. The problem is the main sections, how they should be grouped.
Yeah.
So one solution is to take away the main sections and just have the subsections 6.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it will look like challenges almost, because then we'll have what, 10 sections or 12 sections.
Last week, though, we had a discussion, and we generally felt that it needed some kind of order or organization on it.
I think the grouping is better.
Because it was just like one thing after another, and there was no kind of. I mean, it might be that we need to split them further or rearrange them in some different way. But I have to say, I quite like the contact process one because, as I say, that seems to be quite fundamental to epidemic modeling. But I think people could sort of go away and have a think about it and come up with some alternative.
I mean, one solution is, of course, to add just one new head section called other aspects, and then whatever we think does not really fit into one, move to other aspects, or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I agree that it's nicer to have a few main groups and then have some arguments in each group than having 15 different sections or something like that. That's a little bit messy. Okay, so at this point we have kind of 5 sections, but some are bigger than others. And we are about how many people? We are 9 right now here. How do we subdivide this and then start kind of taking care of each section with the idea of making it a little bit shorter and not so much overlapping if there are overlaps with other sections. So we'll all have to read everything in the end, but then concentrate on one section or something like that.
Yeah, I think it. So maybe we should have a. Maybe we should just have a document on the Dropbox, which is stuff that you've taken out. Like if you think there's an overlap, just so that we don't lose it completely.
Mhm. And I don't think there's very much overlap between the sections, but we should just check to be sure.
Yeah.
I think there's more repetition within the sections in a way, but some ideas are taken up twice somewhere in the text. That was my feeling reading quickly at least, but sometimes I had the feeling, hasn't this been said already above some way? So how do we split the thing to start with?
Well, he wants to do 6.1.
Shall we work in groups in some way as we have done before, try to have some people on each section with this task of compacting?
I think my proposal would maybe just to split it in half, because I kind of feel that 6.0 to 6.2 I've had a fair look at, so I'd rather, I think it'd be good if someone else did those, and then the second half of the paper, I think.
That seems like a natural split.
Yeah.
Okay, so Glenn is looking at the second half of the paper.
Yeah.
And I can participate in a group that looks at the first half of the paper.
Yeah, I'd be happy to be part of that group if it helps.
So 6.0 to 6.2, right?
Yeah.
And me, somebody else who wants to have a look at
I'd be happy.
If you need more people, I would feel more comfortable with the first part rather than the second. But yeah, I don't know how many people you're looking for.
Let's see what happens. If we all, except Glenn, choose to do the first part, then we have to rebalance.
I'll be more happy with the second part, so I'm happy to work on
Same.
that, Glenn.
I think that isn't the thing to schedule to schedule 2 discussions for one for first half, one for second half, and to just agree where people put ideas. I mean, obviously, I think in the Dropbox, but maybe labeling them so it's clear they relate to first half or they relate to second half, and then see who turns up for the discussions. As long as we can try and make sure that there'll be at least 2 people who turn up for each discussion. Is that the sort of essence of it?
I'm not sure. I mean, some of it, I'm sure the discussions would be useful, but some of it I think needs somebody to actually, and different people to actually take a few paragraphs and actually rewrite them in a tighter form.
Yeah.
And that you can't really do in a discussion. So
then you can ask the other ones, do you like this? And they say, no, that's really bad. I mean, then it has to be done. But no, but I also feel that it's easier to be given the task, rewrite this thing, household models and extensions, and then let's see if the other ones kind of say that's okay, and then that's at least the way forward, right?
Jumpy,
See,
even you're covering the first three sections, I wouldn't mind some input on the households model as well, because I've said a couple of things about estimation stuff that I have. Yeah, your input is appreciated.
yes, with pleasure.
I can be the second part as well, second half.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, Peter was with us, I think earlier,
Yeah,
or maybe I joined that.
No, I think he's there.
But he certainly wrote some of this, and I think if we were rewording parts, any parts of anybody's, I can imagine wanting to go back to the person who wrote it and say, can I reword it like this, or have I totally distorted what you said?
Yeah, yeah. I think probably we should.
He's not here now, so we could decide that we send everything to him to review at the end. He cannot protest.
He was here literally a second ago. I saw his
Yes,
face.
yes.
Yeah, I thought I saw it.
I agree, but he's not in the participant list.
Have we just
I've
waited?
got to go to the post.
Have we just waited until he disappeared to kind of drop everything on him?
Oh,
Do we also know what Jasmina would prefer?
Imagine Jasmina would prefer to be in the second part, but I'm not sure. Well, she's kind of straddled both, but I mean, I know it's good to be. I mean, presumably, whatever changes are made, people can always come back and say, "I don't like." I think my feeling is, given the time scale, and also having been through it, I think it is quite close. I just think it just needs a bit of wordsmithing and adding references and all that kind of thing. And I think that's probably best done with a small number of people.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, if Jasmina wants to contribute. I mean, so what I was going to suggest was I split this and have part 1 and part 2, so we can just work on those documents separately.
Yep.
And then I might put in the README file, I'll put something that's saying what we're doing, so that hopefully anyone that's not here can then contribute to the 2 sections. And I'll send an email around after this explaining what we're going to do.
You mentioned timelines. What timeline are we aiming for out of interest?
Well, I don't know. What do people think is realistic? I mean, I'm kind of aware that the last couple of weeks I've kind of said I'll have something done by Wednesday, but then the beginning of the week turns out to be a nightmare, and I don't really get to it until Wednesday night. So,
No. I mean, time is filling out now with other meetings, a lot of seminars online. It's even worse than usual.
So we could just say by next Thursday or something. We should do this so that people have like at least Friday morning before the meeting to read through. Does that seem like reasonable, or we could go for something like more ambitious and say by Tuesday? But
on the other hand, I guess that we must, in some sense, also shorten time now to get this over with, because we had some kind of deadline by the end of March, right? Or maybe after Easter, I don't know exactly.
The first deadline was the beginning of March, I think. So. We seem to have missed that. So I mean, it sort of depends how quickly people think that they can have a go at these sections.
Oh, but let's try it for, say, posting something on Thursday at the latest, so that we can discuss at least the results on Friday.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask, is it the plan that the subgroups discuss first before Friday, or we'll discuss everything on Friday, both parts?
No, we can discuss over email or whatever.
Right. Okay.
Or presumably over all the other electronic means here, Skype or whatever we use.
I mean, is it worth, within the subgroups, is it worth just having an order, so that maybe what the first person looks at it first and then passes it on, so that we're not
Mm,
kind of editing.
Some- something like that. Or you know, maybe with the first group at least, which I've looked at more, because somehow I always start at the beginning and run out of time. So
Yeah, I know the
you
feeling.
know, but maybe almost dividing. We've got a group of 4, dividing that into 2 and 2. So 2 people look at 6.1 to start with, and then pass it the other way, and similarly with 6.2,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
just to sort of get things moving a little bit quicker.
Or, I mean, well, one suggestion might be for if people have any fairly immediate comments on where they think things could be made shorter, they could email the coordinator, particularly of the the first of Gianpaolo for the first half and Glenn for the second, to say something like, you know, I think that these particular 3 topics could be shortened. I would be happy to have a go at it. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that would maybe help Gianpaolo and Glenn to have an idea of if there was a consensus as to which bits we should cut.
Yes, yes. Although it would even
And
be
also
quicker,
perhaps and also it would be an opportunity for people to state whether they think the sequence of topics is wrong. So if people read, so in other words, if each of us reads through our half or indeed the whole paper and asks themselves the question, is this a section that could really be shortened? And if so, am I the person who could shorten it? And secondly, is the sequence of topics right? I don't think that if we came up with ideas, we'd have 9 different ways of ordering the paper. I think it's more that there are a few specific instances. There are a few specific sections where it's not quite clear where they fit best in the sort of flow of the paper, perhaps.
Yeah.
yes, that means that each group here should have maybe 1 general discussion about principles, because the pieces at least will probably stay within the groups, right? There's not very much that will move between the groups. Of course, that's not certain, but probably. So the group should first have a small general discussion about the general structure within the subject matter of the group. And then presumably just take one or 2 subsections for each person to shorten and rewrite, and then putting it together again, and then see if you think it's nice. Try to get something done in a way. Because I still believe that the easiest thing is to take one subject. I mean, as Lorenzo suggested, I might say, okay, I take this household models and extensions that has already been more or less written, and say, I will try to shorten that. And then people will look at it within the group. That's the easiest way to get at least one shortened version quickly out. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That if we start by trying to shorten, just to rewrite, to make it all more concise, and then try and bring it
Then
back
maybe
together.
regroup things afterwards. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I think Glenn was rather convincing that maybe it's just a question of maybe thinking about the title of the head groups. I mean, should it be representing contact processes, or should it be human contacts and behavior? Should that be the title? Then everything fits a little bit easier. I don't know, but that's not much. I mean, deciding on changing the name of the super section. Because I guess we all are more or less agreed that the subsections should more or less be in the paper. There's no useless subsection or repetitive subsection. So it's more a question of names of the supersections.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe moving one from one section to another, although I don't see that, especially not between the two groups, and not very much within the groups either. Of course, I mean, there might be things that, but that's not my business anymore, that are common to real-time decisions and surveillance. Because how you surveil things is can be a real-time problem. But I mean, when we think about that, when one looks at the details, what is one saying in each section? Just as contact tracing, of course, has something to do with contact processes. But it's another activity, on the other hand, to trace them than to just represent them.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
that's the obvious one that could switch between those two sections, I think. But
Yeah, probably. At least it's easy because they contain similar words.
I was thinking the same, but at the same time, representing the contact process is more about what sort of kind of human structure is relevant, and then contact tracing instead is models that try to capture that.
No, yes, there are differences. So there's a reason why they are where they are now, which is a good reason. And so in the end, after having thought about all these things, one decides, let it be as it is or something, presumably. Maybe when looking at what is written, one could move one sentence from one paragraph to another or something like that. So it fits better here, that aspect of that. But that's when you start rewriting things. That's difficult to predict exactly what you move and what you believe and what you do. That's why I think this idea of two main groups is quite good. They kind of cut things quite well into different things. And then within the groups, I think the best thing is just to start doing something. So I second Valerie's idea that, okay, let's now assign pieces to people, try to shorten them, show them to the others in the group, and then see if the whole thing still fits together.
so Ben and Lisa, I've just suggested that we all take those sections and look at them first, and maybe we could arrange to meet one morning next week.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah, I haven't contributed as much to 6.5, so it really makes more sense for me to
Yeah, I was trying to juggle things around.
comment on something that I haven't already, because otherwise I probably would have written it in a different way if I thought it was should have been written differently. So
Exactly.
that makes sense.
Well, I thought that was the
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can take a fresh look.
Jampi, do you want to be similarly dictatorial over the first section?
sorry guys.
So with the first things, well, maybe we can leave the introduction right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Although I think that you could cut some things in the
Yeah,
introduction.
I think it needs a bit of cutting as well.
But otherwise, we have two sections. We have 4 people, and so we can start with making a division in 2. Since Lorenzo wanted me to look at the household stuff, I will look at 6.1 together with anybody candidate.
I'm happy to.
Okay, Valerie. So me and Valerie look at 6.1 and try to shorten that by having very stronger contact. And then we are left with Francesca and Peter to look at 6.2. Is that okay? Now Peter is not here. I'll have to write him an email That's Francesca's around, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sei d'accordo? 6.2.
Yes, perfect.
I put your name here as well, JMP, because I think there was a request for you to take a look at that section in particular, but you're going to be anyway.
Which one? The contact?
Household model.
Household models. I think.
Yes.
I mean, it's in your section anyway, but
Yes.
Yeah.
I will try to say something useful about it. And maybe I'll try to be useful. I'll also try to have a look at this introduction, because I remember being responsible for the first part of that introduction. I'm still not very satisfied with it. So maybe one can cut it down a little bit. Okay. But anyway, Valerie and I have a look at the whole of 6.1, the various pieces. I mean, there are 2 pieces. If you want to have a specific piece, then which one you like? The ones that called bridging the gap and accounting for human behavior.
Well, the bridging the gap bit is just a very short paragraph that Dennis wrote. I doubt if that will, as it stands, I don't think it's going to need a lot of shortening. So I suspect.
I also have a feeling that in some sense the spatial distribution and behavior of people will probably get into the accounting for human behavior.
Yeah, it may be that. Well, I don't know. We'll have to read it and see. But I think it's the accounting for human behavior one where one will most naturally be some scope for rewriting, shortening, trying to.
Yes, because very much of this spatial thing is that people who live far away usually have less contacts, except in the gravity model, if they're far away, is 2 important cities or something like that.
It may maybe that shortening may require joining these things up more rather than
Maybe.
yeah,
separately.
I mean, I think that the human behavior thing is there's aspects at lots of different scales though. So, and there's also the element which relates to different activities as well. So
Yeah, but the bridging the gap bit one could combine that with the household models and extensions into one bigger,
Yes.
So I mean, it's basically so it would be allowing for population structure, I suppose.
Yes, there is a kind of multi-type view of this.
Maybe
structure.
I mean, might you move the accounting for human behavior to the beginning there almost, so that it's.
Yeah, I think that's what Francesca.
That you describe the difficulties of finding a structure that represents the complexity of human behavior that you're trying to do.
Well, I think that might be
to then I think giving this picture that there are a number of good approaches that have been developed, but that the challenge is that we don't feel that these are by anything like a final word on representing a human contact structure.
Yeah.
So there are challenges to reconcile what you get out of different approaches, and maybe to spot what your models are not adequately representing.
If I look at the list here of people, I noticed that Dennis and Lorenzo are still without the task, but they have already contributed in many ways. Do they want to act as the final supervisors or something like that of the work?
I didn't volunteer because I know I'm not going to have much time until Wednesday. Just a couple of Sage and SPI-M urgent asks that arrived today. and yesterday. So that's why I didn't think it was sensible. But Jump, if there is something about the households model, please.
Yes, we can
directly.
We'll be in touch.
And I feel like there is the need for an overall supervisor, in the sense that the problem of everybody writing different sections, and everybody makes a little bit of kind of introductory background paragraph at the beginning of each section, and that can be cut if there is everything at the beginning of the paper. But obviously, it looks now we're going by section, and then now we have two different independent groups that work on two halves of the paper, and maybe we are already over that phase. Maybe already those kind of background.
No, I'm really hoping people don't add in like little introductory sections, because I think I've taken those out quite.
Okay, so
I think that it should be honing, and then maybe flagging if they feel something needs introducing, which we might need to put in the introduction, I guess.
Okay, so which it means we are already past that stage, which is good, because someone has already kind of looked through the entire paper and kind of pruned it. So thanks, Glenn. I just wanted to clarify that.
No, but this whole process has problems and dangers. I mean, we might discover that each subsection starts with the words epidemic modeling is very important for humanity. And then we'll have to take that away.
No, I think this has already been looked at. Like what Glenn was saying, it has already looked at all of this and removed that. It's probably now we are at the next stage now somehow.
No, but I also think that we are also, by having these discussions, conscious of this problem. And we'll try not to put in too many general things when we shorten, instead finding out what is the abstract of this subsection, that is the main thing. And but who knows? I mean, we'll see that when we put things together again. But I think that it's a way of moving forward, at least now, doing this splitting and then reassembling.
So where have we got to with the timetable, and whether there are any subgroup meetings?
The subgroup meeting, they can be done on this same address, I guess, because it's always almost free, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Or is it taken by other groups? There is a hidden timetable that other groups have.
Timetable is basically what it was. I mean, the fixed times of groups are as they were in the last bulletin that we had.
Thursday and Friday are quite busy, but
but other days.
Tuesday morning is policy. Otherwise, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are largely free, aren't they, Valerie?
Yeah, I think so.
But I also guess that we all have each other's email addresses, and we might also decide that let's meet on Skype or whatever that we all have. So it doesn't really matter that other groups do.
But
you can do that by email within the group. I mean,
there's always the other. I mean, the Newton has two channels. There's the one that we're on. I mean, two that are available to us. The one that we're on, which does recordings, and the other one. Now, all the sort of timetable groups are on this one that does the recordings. But the other one is even, at the same time would be free, pretty much always, I think.
Is the other one the old tea and coffee?
Have you still got I can look them up again, but in the old circulars that we got, the bulletins, there were two. One for the recording one and one for the general one, and they're both available 24 hours a day. So if the recording one, this one, is in use, we could always use the other one.
Okay, if you can refine that address and
I can email it to everybody again.
Well, it's in the Dropbox. If in the Dropbox, I've left the last bulletin in the top level of the Dropbox. Okay, so if you look at that, it explains that there are these two channels and it gives the links for them, and that should be the same as it is. Okay,
The
so-
last bulletin. No, in reality, in the last bulletin, there is only one address mentioned, the one we're on now.
No, they're down the but if you get the bulletin page,
Yes.
it first of all tells you about some recordings, and then in a sort
Yes.
of box, there's the all listed discussion groups, which is the
Yes.
thing we're on just at the moment.
Yes.
If you look down the bottom left corner of that page, it says for ad hoc meetings, please use Zoom here.
Which is a different address, you're right.
So that's the
Yes.
informal one. So if we call this the formal one, the one down the bottom left of the page is the informal one. And so
Okay.
you can, anyone wanting to organize a meeting can just tell their friends.
Let's meet on that one. And essentially, the risk is small that we cannot meet all together. But if we do, then we meet all together. So nothing bad really happens.
So I was
We
going to
don't-
suggest, could Gianpaolo and Glenn each send out an email with title something like modeling first half and modeling second half, and we could just have probably just two email, one email conversation for each half.
Yes.
Just in the first part, you can say something like, it would be helpful to have any big comments by Monday or whatever you want to
Yeah.
say. And you could give a time when the discussion is going to be or something like that. But then people can chip in and say things, and they can
Yeah. Okay.
they can put in comments like, I would like to completely rewrite the bit on such and such, just to keep everyone informed. And I suggest that you should send that to both those email streams should include everyone, even though they're, it may be 3 or 4 people particularly who are interested in one or the other.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea.
And I hope people won't mind if I interfere a little bit in both, because one of my reasons for not jumping up to volunteer is I think 6.1 and 6.5 are possibly the 2 sections I'm most interested in, and they're in different halves. So I would rather be, if I may be a commentator to Jean-P and Glenn, if I can find anything useful to say.
Yes.
But I won't undertake any rewriting unless without approval.
Yeah. Great.
Yes. Let's do that.
Liz and
Although-
Ben, do you want to try and arrange a meeting for like Monday morning or Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a long meeting, but I thought it might be worth putting something in the diary for.
Yeah, that I would like to put something in the diary. Tuesday morning's not great. We both have the policy
Yeah.
session.
Right.
Wednesday I'm free before 11. And Monday I can do 10. If any of those.
Do you want to be ambitious and say Monday at 10? Is that too soon? Just Wednesday, I'm not free. Well, I'm free before 9. Or something.
So, do we plan to rewrite before then?
Well, we could all maybe just have a read through our sections, and we could just maybe decide what
Yeah.
we want to do.
Like a start.
Thing to do, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will try to arrange things by email so we get Peter into the discussion as well.
Yeah.
He is somewhere else.
One of the things that the first group need to do, at least the 6.1 thing, is really to try and decide the order, because how you rewrite stuff depends very much on what comes first and so on. So we need a strategy really for deciding about introducing structure, I think. And then once one's got that, you can slot all these sections in and adapt them. Does that
Yes.
sound?
On Monday, can we use this channel at 10?
Some other big meeting on this channel on Monday.
I think,
Dennis and Valerie might know it.
I think that's okay. I don't think, I mean, not as far as I know. We don't
Well,
have
I guess,
any,
yeah.
we don't have anything on a Monday.
Well, the worst thing that happens is that you meet people you didn't expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you could change to the other channel effectively
Yeah.
if you still have that bulletin. Can you say, and then
Yeah.
okay,
Thanks, everyone. That's a plan.
that sounds like we're almost finished with the paper. Yes,
I think I'm not quite clear what I'm expected to do over the next few days. So could
I'll
jump.
I'll try to write an email in a couple of
Okay.
hours.
So I wait for the email and your instructions. That sounds
Yes,
good.
yes, so that we reach Peter as well, and he can
Yeah.
work when he, maybe he's teaching now or something like that, who knows? And we all got teach. I have also have teaching now and then to do. But anyway, yes, I'll write an email in a couple of hours to our little group and try to organize us in some way.
Yeah.
You know that it's risky business to leave organizations by Italian, but sometimes something creative comes out. Okay,
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Right. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. And we have a meeting next Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Right.
Ah, right. Well, yes, vaccination bets is a bit difficult.
Yes. Well, I didn't want to say too much in that because it's being recorded and all that, and this still is. So I think maybe we should go on to another
Yeah.
channel. Or
Why didn't you just send me a link from your own?
okay, we'll do.
Okay.
Right. Right. I'll see you soon.
Right.